What's up, Bills fans? Here we are, another season done and dusted. 2018's in the books, a 6-10 season that was, it came and went so fast, didn't it? Especially for me, I had so much transpire in my life from shortly before the season began. Um, those of you who know me personally know what it was, and then just it was like a whirlwind. But from a football standpoint, it was also just so many tumultuous things happening from the Nathan Peterman 2.0 debacle from in the opener to having to start the Chicago game and just his whole tenure on the team, which was just marred with unfortunate events and pretty much left Sean McDermott embattled in a certain part of the season in a lot of the fan bases and media's eyes, but that was rectified with his release, and it was best for him and for the team. But it goes unsaid. A lot of times, it was particularly good for him to just make a clean break, go reboot his career somewhere else, and all the best to him out in Oakland. I mean, I've told many people many times when I met the guy, he couldn't have been a nicer person, and I'm sure he's everything everybody else says because that's what I got when I met him. So all the best to Nathan Peterman, really. And and it didn't take that long for the next mess to happen in week 2 with Vontae Davis, which was a national story. For a player to walk away at halftime is unprecedented. It's something I've never heard of in over 30 years of sports, period. And for it to happen to the football team that I love so much, it was, I took it personal. I really did. And I know a lot of you did, and rightfully so. For somebody to take off the uniform mid-game and just quit like that, where a lot of us would just give our right leg to have tried it once in any setting, let alone an actual game in front of that crowd in that stadium. So he'll always go down as a villainous figure in Buffalo Bills lore. Like, who is that guy? Like, he no longer has a name um, to us, nor should he. But it took a turn a little bit. Allen started to play a little bit more settled. He did have a little bit of a dip. Got that hit in Houston, which really sucks because now coming off the game yesterday, and I know the people who want to kick dirt on the game say, well, the game didn't mean anything. It's not a meaningless game. When you have a quarterback in place that you feel as a fan base mostly is positive about, one, the organization traded up for, has a strong belief in, and the locker room, more so just the locker room, the guys he plays with have a strong belief in. You see the way the offensive line reacted when Kiko dusted him up on that. He had just gotten a previous roughing the passer penalty that wasn't as blatant or violent. Even though Kiko didn't hit him, he did leg whip around and did catch Allen in the head with his leg. So there was an effort to at least get some contact on Allen going in with that slide, even though he wasn't going in helmet to helmet. He did swing his legs around. And he's a pro athlete. He was very aware of what he was doing. And you saw the way that offensive line reacted, the rest of the team, and the way they talk about him to a man, whether it's offensive players, defensive players, veterans, vested, well-respected veterans, Shady, Lorenzo, Kyle, Jordan Poyer, Micah Hyde, those guys, the meat and potatoes of that locker room, they really, have a firm belief in this kid. They've seen a lot of players come and go, have played with a lot of good players themselves, and they feel like this kid is the truth. So, and we've seen him in games show an ability to be special, and like most rookies, he's shown moments of, oh, please don't do that, and that's to be expected. And we got a lot of that this year in terms of confirmation bias, certain segments of the media that just have us set against them. And I will always say I can't deny the fact that I was dead set against drafting him. I was of that belief that he was as bad as reported. I mean, I watched, the Wyoming stuff, and I was like, I see the arm, I see the physical gifts, but You know, I don't get to meet the kid. I don't get to sit down and talk to him. I don't get the interpersonal connections, and that's a lot of times we don't get that with these teams and these kids, where these organizations and these personnel people do. They get to look at all that stuff, and we don't get to see that. So, but from the skill set standpoint that we saw, everything, the way he, conducted himself, and whether it was in a media setting or what we heard from behind the scenes, it was all really positive, and couldn't ask for more. And he showed flashes of being able to be the best player on the field, being a man apart at the quarterback position. That is huge. It happened in Miami. There was certain segments of the Jets game you saw that. There was definitely last game, and to close the season on a big note with your quarterback means a lot. It means a lot. To go into an off season, where you feel like your guy went out there and was the best player on the field, nobody could stop him. Not that they weren't interested in stopping him, they couldn't stop him. It wasn't like it was a fluke. He did it in Miami over a few weeks ago, and he did it again in better fashion this time with more touch, more offensive production. So a great way for him to cap off the season. Just regret not having those extra 3.5, 4 games where you really could have got to see more. But by all accounts, it's similar to Robert Foster. He said that time injured, being able to step back, play, step back, decompress, press the reset button, have Derek Anderson in the room, who I'll talk about in a minute, just calmed everything down, calmed it down, was able to view the game under a different lens, and came back a better player. You look at the point production from the Barkley game against the Jets all the way to the end, it was palpably different. Palpably different. They raised their points per game over almost a touchdown from the time of that game all the way to the end, which is awesome, because they didn't look like they had a touchdown in them for a few game stretch there, and we all know why. And it was unfortunate, but it was the situation that they put themselves in, and tried to rectify. John Warrow came out with a nice little tidbit today that the Bills did try to get Anderson on the roster back in March, was unwilling to do so at the time, but it was able to get him and secured him today for another year, which was a little bit of a surprise. I mean, after they had just given the 2-year deal to Barkley, I thought that room was settled. I'm like, okay, maybe that. And then for Anderson to come back another year just stabilizes that room even more. And they talked about how much chemistry they had and how good of a room that was. And it's just not good for Allen. It's good for Barkley too. You think about how much that guy has spun around the league, being able to just settle in, know his role, have a veteran like Anderson in there who knows his role, likes his role, is not going to complain, bitch, or moan, and just going to do what he's going to do to help Allen more specifically, but also Barkley to grow and get better. And we've seen this year, like every year, how important the backup quarterback is. We should know as Bills fans, with the amount of injury and turnover and just crazy things that happen at the position, where a guy slips on a mat, or a guy gets hit in a game, and all of a sudden you don't know if he's going to play, because you hear a report of, E.J. Manuel in 2013 comes to mind, and all the different times, we've had quarterback injuries over the last so long. We know how valuable it is, and you see how valuable Nick Foles is. See how valuable, certain guys are to being able to just stabilize something. And it's kind of funny that Barkley is here now, because he's the quarterback I wanted in 2013, not E.J. Manuel. And the organization picked Manuel, and I'm not saying Barkley is a franchise guy, but I think he's proven to be a steady hand. Was coming off an injury last year, wasn't able to be fully healthy. Now he has a chance to be fully healthy, fully integrated in the offense along with Allen. And that's the other thing, is the stability, the coaching staff, the organization, the segments of offense, defense within that coaching staff. And we feel a strong possibility the special teams is going to turn over, which it should. And it's the term of the day in the two separate press conferences, Bean and McDermott's, were judicious, and I think that's a judicious process. They're not just going to come out today, tomorrow, and announce coaching staff changes. They're going to go through the week and take it day by day. They'll make their changes accordingly. Head into the off season and go from there. My cat is kind of running around crazy, excited for New Year, right, Ramius? But yeah, this it's an exciting time for Bills fans because they both touched on it today, where they admitted they came into a situation that wasn't ideal from a cap standpoint, from a talent standpoint. McDermott laid it on pretty thick today, where he said, not developing your players and drafting the right players. He laid some pretty thick nuggets on the prior regime today, and I was like, wow, people aren't really getting this. Like, he's really going in on them in a pretty rough way, but rightfully so. And they took on the task. They ate they really hit on the dead money that they had to eat today. At over $50 million not on the field, but the judicious word is they're not going to go in the offseason and spend like gangbusters or drunken sailors, and that's a good thing. That's a good thing. You don't want them to go out throwing around cash like it's going out of style to try to put a panacea on this and that. It's a collective thing because they've shown that they can spot talent, good talent, and they don't have to pay a premium for it. And there's the receiving core. There's a few players now that, Zay Jones looks like a guy that they, paid a second-round pick for, went up to get. He had, 7 receiving touchdowns. 6 of those touchdowns came in the last 7-8 games of the year. Most of his statistics came in that time of the year. Most of his receptions. He seemed to just get a little bit of a rapport with Allen going. Same thing with Robert Woods. Robert Woods in that same time frame had over 510 yards receiving, 3 touchdowns, almost 4 100-yard games. And for a Bills receiver, that's huge. 20 yards a catch. And Isaiah McKenzie looks like he at times looked like a nice little situational player, whether it was on those jet sweeps, those reverses, whether they're able to return punts, kicks. Seemed like he worked well in the slot, found those little spots in the zones underneath. He looks like he has some quicks to him. So, and I'm not saying those guys are the end all be all at the position, but it's a nice little group. And how many of those guys got tons of reps with Allen in the offseason? Not many. Excuse me. Jason Kroom's another guy. Granted, he has the fumble to his name. And also another young player that they had last year released, brought him back. He was their leading receiver at tight end. Not great, but still he showed a little bit of athleticism, a little bit of go up and get it, as he did at the end of that Jacksonville game, which was a nice catch. That was a huge catch, and they were able to win that game and salt that game away on the strength of that catch and not give the ball back, which was nice, which was really nice. And look at the defensive unit, as horribly as they started out and as a few clunkers as they had, they were only 19 yards away from being the #1 defense in the NFL. And Kenyon Drake had a 19-yard run today. 19 yards away from being the #1 defense in the NFL. That's crazy. And a lot of the points given up, I know, short fields, pick sixes, turnovers. They were at the start of last game. I think they had like 28 turnovers, which is not good. You don't want 28 turnovers. I think they ended the season -3 in turnovers, and that's something they didn't get a lot of this year defensively, was the turnovers. But just kind of reviewing the season, overall, it was a bumpy ride. But I mean, we're going into an exciting offseason, and it's going to start right away. They're going to, who knows when these staff changes come. We all know that the Senior Bowl is kind of a job fair for assistant coaches looking to get hired, or teams looking to hire prospective assistant coaches. We know it's going to be the Raiders and the 49ers coaching the Senior Bowl. Mike Mayock is on the staff of one of these Senior Bowls along with John Gruden, so and Mike Shanahan and John Lynch. So this is going to be not that the Senior Bowl isn't. It doesn't have the fanfare that the like it did last year when there was Josh Allen, Baker Mayfield, and Rudolph, and all the contingent of quarterbacks that were down there, even though Rosen and Darnold and weren't, but there was still a strong group of quarterbacks. And even this year, it's an intriguing group. Daniel Jones announced today he is coming out, and he's got the David Cutcliffe roots there. He's got the size coming from Duke, so there's going to be a team that sees that potential, maybe at that number 9 pick, sees the value in that, and maybe the Bills, because I think, going into the offseason, I'm going to start talking about the offseason a little bit, judicious spending in free agency. McDermott said today they're not going to be heavy-handed in terms of forcing draft picks. He's not going to draft for need. He's going to draft best player available. So if you look at this draft right now, as we know it today, as defensive heavy it is, I could almost say that we're going to see a defensive player be the Bills' number 1 pick. And I kind of think, if I look at it right now, that this draft is going to be a lot like their first draft. Even though Bean wasn't there, I think we might see this team trade back. Given that the quarterbacks aren't the best of the best, but you see a Haskins, who I think is coming out, you see a Jones, you see a Drew Lock. I think those 3 quarterbacks will go in round 1 based on size, athleticism, arm talent, potential, more so than anything. It doesn't have the fanfare or even the arm talent that last year's did, but it's still a premium position. And the Bills are just hovering on that cusp. I think they can, whether it's a Redskins with a tenuous situation that they have, or, take your team in that, 10 and below range. Maybe the Broncos swap a pick. Who knows? Just to jump ahead of somebody, and the Bills recoup a 1 for next year in 2020, a 2 this year, and maybe another mid-round pick. That would be ideal. And then you can take your defensive tackle, your cornerback, a few more picks down the run where you feel a little more comfortable, and you have more picks in your arsenal. Which us Bills fans, any fan of any team loves having a lot of picks, right? You know a lot of those draft picks, especially in the lower rounds, might not make your squad, like an Austin Proehl this year. Like a Ray McLeod's going to be fighting for his position, but then you get a Teron Johnson, who's was a really good player for the Bills, and Matt Milano, who's one of the Bills' best players on defense, and 4th, 5th round pick. Teron Johnson, 4th round pick. So yeah, they've shown an ability to find some players in those rounds, and if they have picks in those rounds, that's an exciting thing. Maybe Wyatt Teller's a player, who knows? But we know that offensive line needs additions, and I think they're going to want to have Allen be surrounded with ready-to-go talent that knows how to play in the league. Obviously, with that said, be played in the league, have some, have at least a good resume. If they're going to pay for them in free agency. And of course, this is the Bills. This is McDermott and Bean's roster now. This is their roster. I mean, it was their roster. It's their roster, and it's taken a lot of hits, but it's also shown some good things. I mean, you look at a guy like Shaq Lawson, who was a pick of Whaley and Rex, and he was one of the day 1 starters off the bus, and this guy, he totally reinvented himself and is a process McBean guy now. I mean, he closed out that game really strong, had tons of batted passes. He wasn't quite getting to the quarterback, but he was right there in that defensive end rotation, and he looked like a guy that might be cut. He looked like he was going the way of Reggie Ragland before the season started, and he became a key cog in that defensive end rotation, and played very, very well. Very, very well. So, I mean, hats off to him. Jordan Phillips came in, off a waiver claim, played solidly, did well. Levi Wallace. I mean, who the hell was Levi Wallace? Drafted free agent from Alabama, stuck on the practice squad, came in, was around the Jets game, around there. Then a little after that, started, being a regular. Ryan Lewis was there, didn't really, then he had the concussion, was on the in the concussion protocol Lafayette Pitts would play sparingly. It was more of a special teams player. But Levi Wallace for the last 5 weeks, 6 weeks of the season was in that, and I didn't really notice him, and that's a good thing. I really didn't see him getting burned or toasted or a lot of pass interference penalties, illegal contact penalties, holding penalties. So he, again, a guy who was an undrafted free agent, came in and really held an account of himself. And offensively, they've Robert Foster, a guy like, I'm not saying Isaiah McKenzie's a world beater, but he's came in and played well. So the biggest position, the most important position on the team, of course, as we know, is quarterback. It's so comforting to know that room is settled. Those three guys are in place. Maybe you add a camp arm. You add a camp arm to run extra routes for receivers, get them work so the guys can rest. Or maybe those guys want as many reps as possible, particularly Allen and Barkley. So, be that as it may, they probably bring in a fourth just for shits and giggles and rookie mini camp, most likely. And when the guys come back in late March, which can't get here soon enough for us Bills fans right now. But we all know this team needs ads. LaShawn McCoy was a topic of discussion, of course. The team, obviously, both McDermott and Bean said that they want him back, they envision him back, and of course the team is going to say that. If a team, and I'm not saying they're going to move LaShawn. LaShawn, to me, is 50-50 to return. They can either sit on him and keep him, and he's a Bill next year for the last year of his contract, or they can end up trading him. But if you're going to trade a player, you're going to trade an asset on your roster. You're not going to down talk him in front of the media. You're not going to devalue him. You're not going to say you don't want him. Oh yeah, we don't know. You're not going to vacillate in him at all. You're going to be steadfast. Yeah, we want that guy. We envision this guy here. He's a key member of our. Of course, you're going to play poker, and you're going to try to. Well, we value him. What are you going to give us? We like this player, and I think they do. I think they can. You saw a few glimpses of it yesterday, but I just think the state of that offensive line does not lend itself to LaShawn having a lot of success, as he needs a few initial blocks to start getting those little jump cuts and forward motion going before he can take off. Even on the touchdown run, he looked like he couldn't believe he had so much room to just go and score, but he did. And, it's good to see him get a little touchdown late in the year, being such a bad year for him and stuff. But it wasn't a great game statistically. I mean, he's still a decent catcher of the football, so we'll see. But we know they need additions there. I want to see some fresh legs. I want to see them start to be, and I think it's pretty obvious where they're going offensively. It's going to be an offensive football team built around its quarterback going forward with this group, and it's not going to be an offense that's built around a running game with a quarterback that you have to play around rather than play through, like it's been for so long. I want to see them go in that third round and find not this guy in particular off the field, but talent-wise, go find the next, Kareem Hunt. Go find a Lindsey in undrafted free agency. Go find guys like that. Go find, a George Edwards. There's tons of these guys out there, these types of running backs who can make hay in the run game that you don't have to pay a premium for in the draft. Go get a couple of them. And then go forward, because what I saw from Keith Ford, it wasn't very impressive. Ivory is not particularly young, makes it a good little bit of money. I'm not interested in keeping a backup running around, a 30-year-old running back around for $3 million. I'm just not. Even though he did play well, but he gets hurt. He does. He gets hurt. He has a very physical running style, and he gets hurt. And we'll see where they go. Maybe, 5 years ago that would have been a good idea, but not now. I did have another big catch yesterday and run, kind of similar to the Minnesota game. I was kind of pissed he didn't score a touchdown. I wanted to see Allen get as many touchdown passes as possible, touchdown receptions as possible yesterday. But, he still made a good running catch and got him down there, and Allen snuck it in for the touchdown, which I feel like with this quarterback, I said it on my Instagram story, it's a cheat code. Anytime you get in that 4th and 1, in short situation, 4th and inches, this guy, I'm going for it every time with this quarterback. I feel like I can get that play not 100% of the time with this quarterback, and it's so again another comforting thing. Like they're willing to do it. He's shown he can do it, and it's just it was one of those things we just always fell victim. You see Tom Brady do it time and time again, and I want to see him start doing it a little more with a little more alacrity, fluidity, where they just rush to the line, get it going, boom. Other team's not ready. Sorry, not our fault. You're not set for play. Boom, just get it in there. But yeah, that's really it, Bills fans. I touched on everything I feel like was needed. It's going to be an exciting offseason. I don't have names yet. I don't know any names. I know we know some of the draft guys. There's always going to be guys who shoot up the boards and fall. And there's going to be guys who fall down the boards because they don't interview as well. They don't work out as well. Their medicals aren't as good. This and that. We all know the reasons. We all know the quarterbacks are going to get pushed up the board when the time comes to start turning in the names. And hopefully, again, the Bills, they're in a better draft position than that year with KC. They can be sitting right there, and if another team wants to come up for a Haskins, a Jones or a Locke, they're like, okay, this is the price, and it's a good yield of picks, and you go down and get a good football player like a Trey White, who's shown to be really, really good. Unfortunately, had to leave the game, concussion protocol, but still a good, really, really good player. And I'm all for it. I'm all for it. I want to see this team really, my druthers, I want to see this team now that Allen's in places build these lines. I don't want to see them getting run on for the tune of 200 plus yards anymore. I want to see them start mauling people up front and being able to, if we want to run with Allen, guess what? Our quarterback can run on you like a running back, and he can. We didn't know about his running ability. Nobody anticipated, nobody saw him being able to run like this. I mean, I don't know what the hell was wrong with that 40 clock, that stopwatch that they were using in Indy. But this guy's not running 4.7s out there. He's running 4.5s, and with his stride, his stride length, it's crazy. Because he's not running through. He's out running people. He's out running linebackers, and corners, and safeties. And then he's so big. It's just, it's like another cheat code. And you get a little bit of running game where he could just turn around, run the ball, calm a game down, slow a game down, take the air out of the ball, keep the other team's defense on the field. And then there's so many other things that open up for you offensively. It's going to be really, really exciting to see this start to all get pieced together this offseason. It's so long, but it's going to be such a rewarding journey, and I can't wait to take it all with you, because you guys make it all worthwhile coming on here and talking to you. Otherwise, I'm just here talking to myself, and sometimes I do that too. But no matter who it is, even you, Corey, even you. Yep, I mentioned you. I should mention you. You viewed my stuff for a long time. Why not? So, and I appreciate that, irregardless of opinion. But, let me know what you guys think. Like I was saying, I want to see this team go on those lines. And if they trade back and get a Christian Wilkins, or trade back and get a Jonah Williams, one of the, there's a lot better offensive line group in the draft this year. Because I think they need to do both. I think they need to address the offensive line with veterans and young players, because they're only really, they have two pretty much young players along the offensive line right now in Dawkins and Teller. I think Bodine is on the roster for another year. I mean, maybe they cut him, maybe they just keep him as a backup center, but everybody else is just, they're up. Their contracts are up with the Bills, and I don't see anybody, in that group returning, and nor should they, given the lack of production in that group. But Kyle's absence now, and my one criticism that I have, as great a player as he was, always said when he couldn't beat people with quickness and technique, and he didn't win in that area, and the offensive line was able to get a body on him and start moving them, that's when the Bills would get gashed. in the run game, even sometimes with a Darius on the side of him, with a Latulele beside him, and Marcus Stroud. You know, he always needed a bigger body by him, but I think, you know, they need a, an athlete similar to Kyle, but in a bigger body, in a more physical, stronger body. You know, like a Christian Wilkins, you know, who I just named, a Jeffrey Simmons, and there's so many good players in that position this year that they can trade back and feel comfortable taking that player at a lower pick and get more picks. That's fine with me. Or if they want to trade back and take that corner, whether it's DeAndre Baker, Williams, Byron Murphy, one of those guys that they like, go right ahead. I'm all for it. Or maybe it's an offensive lineman, but I want to see this team build those lines, because now that the quarterback's in place, that's the next phase of the football team that needs to be addressed, and you really win the game in those areas when you can start competing, because you know we all associate New England with high octane offense, but when they want to buckle down and run the ball, they can, and that's why you see that they just spin backs at you one after the other, because they're, you know, that's why they were so hot and bothered to get that offensive line coach back that they had lost. He had the little retirement, stepped away, came back, and you know he's an older guy, but he gets those guys playing and he knows how to coach, obviously, and they play physically. And he's a really important part of their coaching staff, that's for sure. Because when they want to buckle down and run the ball, I can cite tons of examples where Brady wasn't at his best, even in his prime, certain days, and they can get a Jonah Gray to run for 200 yards. They can, you know, get LeGarrette Blount to start running wild, or you know, or you know, Kevin Falk, Rex Burkhead, Danny Woodhead, all these, you know, just myriad of backs. You know, Lawrence Maroney, Sammy Morris, just the list of backs that they've had there. Well, Brady's tenure goes on and on. Now they have a Sony Michel, a young back who's really talented. So, you know, yeah, then you know James White, who's was a mid-round pick, but excellent receiver of the football, can run and make, you know, and do some stuff in the run game too. So that's where I want to see the Bills go in the run game, being able to control the line of scrimmage, and then you can just have those backs that you can just rotate in and out. Every 3 or 4 years, you have a new stable of backs that just, and you're not paying a premium at that position. That's just my philosophy, and I want to see that's the way I want to see them go and build along those lines. You know, granted the Bills run a 4-3, but I want to see them get a little bit more physical and dynamic up front. You know, and you get younger. I mean, they're not the oldest, but they're not the youngest up there. So, all right, Bills fans, have a great New Year. Take care. We're 25 minutes away from 2019. It's a new Bills season today, officially, for me and for you. And I can't wait to start to see how they build this 2019 version of the Buffalo Bills football team. And look forward to watching it unfold with all of you. Love you all. Take care. Be safe. Have fun. Enjoy it. And talk to you soon.